Cześć, mówi Dave. This short video is for other learners of Polish like me, who have tried to learn it beyond the absolute basics and started to come across a few difficulties, particularly with things like grammar and pronunciation that take quite a long time really to get your head around and to assimilate. So I'm just going to talk about how I see it from the point of view of an English speaker, native English speaker, how I compare what I understand from Polish with my own language, and hopefully other native English speakers or people who know English very well may be able to learn a bit more about how Polish works as a language. So I've jotted down a few things to cover, but if anyone has questions or additions or comments, then please just respond to this video. So things I'm going to look at: firstly, cases, then I'll say something about numbers, then verbs and tenses, and then a little bit about pronunciation. So I'm just going to look at basically the things that you should try and avoid, the kind of pitfalls of Polish, things that I've kind of learnt the hard way that I didn't really find in any book anywhere. So first one, cases. I remember when I first came across the idea of a case, I was probably about 19 or 20, and I hadn't heard this idea before. I'd learnt French at school and a bit of German, and I was interested in languages, but I hadn't come across this idea, and it was a bit alien at the beginning. Found out later that we do actually have some kind of remnants of cases in English. A case is basically a marker on any word in a sentence that tells you what that word is doing in the sentence, what function it has, how it relates to the other words in the sentence, and that helps the person listening make sense of the string of words that you've just given them. Polish indicates the case of a word by usually changing the ending of the word. Now I think this is a really logical way for a language to work, and it's interesting that English doesn't have this anymore. A really nice example to kind of show that is how English, to make sense of an English sentence, you need to use the right word order. If you put the words in the wrong order, of course it's going to make no sense. I don't need to give you an example for that, it's obvious. But in Polish, because you have the different endings on different words, you can move the words around in order in the sentence, and it still makes sense. The emphasis might be a bit different. There might be more attention drawn to one part of the sentence than the other, but it still makes sense, and that gives Polish a kind of a different way of organising ideas. So the example I saw in a book once was, if you take the English sentence, the man threw the dog a ball. Now obviously if you change the word order, you're going to get some pretty crazy, nonsensical sentences like the dog threw the ball a man, or the man threw the ball a dog, and it's quite funny what that sort of creates in your mind. But Polish, if you say exactly word for word, the man, pan, for example, threw, rzucił, the dog, psu, a ball, piłkę. If you say that in that order, then that's very similar to the English sentence. But notice those words, well, I probably haven't noticed yet. For example, the pan is man, throw in the past tense, rzucił, dog. Normally, if you look in the dictionary, the word dog, or translate it on Google, it'll tell you pies is dog. But you don't say pies in this sentence, you say psu. And psu is the word dog, but in a particular case. And the case shows that it's the kind of the benefactor, the thing that is affected or benefited by the action, i.e. the man throws the ball for the dog's benefit, and the dog has to get it. So that's indicated not by other words or anything like that, just simply by saying psu. And it doesn't matter where that word psu is in the sentence, it still means the same thing. And the other one, the word ball, piłka, that word piłka is in a particular case. Normally it would be piłka, not piłkę. In the dictionary, it'd give you what we call the nominative case, just the sort of plain nothing case. Piłka, ball. But in this sentence, it's piłkę, so the ending changes. That tells you that it's the object in the sentence. It's the thing that is having something done to it. So the man is throwing the ball. What's the man throwing? It's the ball. The man's not throwing the dog, so we're not changing the case of dog to demonstrate this. He's throwing the ball. So you can mix up the word order. You could say rzucił pan piłkę psu, which is like saying through the man, the ball, the dog. Something like that. But in Polish, that's not how it sounds. In Polish, that makes some sense. It's kind of prioritizing the word rzucił, which was the first word in that example, but it makes sense. So that's quite an interesting example. So yeah, case is basically, it's a way of organizing ideas in a sentence, and all the nouns in Polish, all the names for things, can change their ending according to the cases. Now in Polish there's supposed to be 7 cases, although the 7th case, vocative, wołacz, is kind of just used for kind of grabbing attention, or so if you, like, for example, if you say mum because you wanted to turn and look at you, you say mama in Polish. So there's not much flexibility in application for the 7th case, but the other 6 cases, including the first one, which is just the nothing case, they all have various functions and possible uses in a sentence. I'm not going to go into that. If you want me to talk about that more, I can do in another video. So basically, yeah, that's what cases do. Now, in terms of learning the language, you could sit down and learn all those tables and inflections telling you what the case endings are for singular, plural, etc. And it's probably worth taking some time to do that, doing practice exercises. That's what I did. But when it comes to actually spontaneous speech, conversation, then don't get hung up about what ending you need in the sentence, because even if you use the wrong ending, it's gonna the listener's not going to be stupid. They'll be able to make sense of what you're trying to say by just hearing the noun, even if the ending's not quite right. Just like in English, if you said something like, I've got 3 child, they're going to understand that you've got 3 children, not 3 child, but it's the same kind of thing. So don't get hung up about it, because a mistake I made earlier on in learning was that I would just stop thinking, what ending do I need? Genitive, plural, and it was boring for the person listening, and they just knew already what I wanted to say, so I just got on with it. And hopefully, naturally over time, your natural sort of way of acquiring language kicks in. Okay, so that's a little bit about cases. Numbers, obviously you can go and learn all the numbers. The only thing is, with Polish, unlike English, you can't just learn the name for each number, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and that's it, you just use them. You've got to change them, not only according to the case that you use, but also things like gender. That only applies really for numbers 1 and 2. Obviously they're the most common numbers that are used, so that's the only one that Polish today decides to apply differently to male things and female things, or neuter things, because Polish has 3 genders in that sense. So like 1 would be, for example, if you said, I don't know, 1 table. Table's a masculine word, stół, so you'd say jeden stół. 2 tables, 2 stoły. But if it was something feminine, so for example, książka, that's book, książka. 1 książka is not jeden książka, it's jedna książka. And it's not 2 książki, 2 books, but it's 2 książki. So you have to change the ending from 2 to 2. And the same for neuter things. You would say jedno. Dwa is actually the same for neuter things. So a neuter word is krzesło, which is chair. So one chair is jedno krzesło. Two chairs is dwa krzesła. Plurals is another thing, by the way, which is a little bit slightly inconsistent, but that's another time. Yeah, there are more considerations with the number, things like if it's masculine animate things or living male things like people, men, teachers or something like that, and you have to also change the ending, and the same for case for that, but I won't go into that now, just something to be aware of, I guess. In terms of counting things, it's a little bit weird, because it's weird because of the noun that you count. So if you've got a plural, if you've got more than one of something, Polish has a plural form, and then if it's 2, 3, or 4 of the thing, then they just use a normal plural of the noun. So, for example, book, again, książka, jedna książka, one book. 2, 3, 4 books is dwie książki, trzy książki, cztery książki. Książki is the normal plural form of book. However, if you get to 5, Poles this is kind of how I see it, they perceive 5 and above as kind of a mass of something. It's not just sort of individual countable things that you can separate. It's kind of considered more of a group, and because of that, they apply a case to that, genitive case, popelnilem, it's called genitive. So książki changes to książek, which is books, plural, in the genitive case, and that kind of rule applies for all the sort of tens that you go through, strangely except for the 20s. For the tens. So if you say for example 12, 13, 14 of something, you just use the normal plural of something. Is that right? Wait a minute. Yeah, and if you do 12, 13, and 14, you use genitive plural, like you would 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, etc. But then when you get to 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, etc., plus 2, 3, 4, then you use the plural without the genitive. Again, let me demonstrate that again with the book example. So again, 2, 3, 4 books is dwie, trzy, cztery książki. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 books would be 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 książek. 11 books is książki. And then you go for 12, 13, 14, you've got the genitive plural. So you've got 12, that's 12, 12 książek, genitive plural. And that goes right through up until 20. But then when you get to 22, you go back to this weird sort of just normal plural kind of thing. So 22, 22, 22 książki, 23 książki, 24 książki. Then when you get to 25, 25 książek. And that rule is consistent for 32, 42, etc., etc. Pretty weird. I don't think it's the end of the world if you choose the wrong ending, but it's something to bear in mind. Okay, so verbs and tenses. Right. So tenses, verbs take a tense depending on the sort of temporal quality or where they're happening in time. And it works a bit differently to English. Now, I'm an English teacher, so I'm not going to go into too much sort of technicalities about what happens in English, because most English people haven't really thought about it or really learned it in much depth. So, but just to kind of help you understand Polish, so the verbs take a past tense, kind of like English does. If something happened at a time before now, and the time is finished, then we use the past tense. We change the end of the word, just like in English. So, I swam last week. Last week is a time which is finished, and in that time I swam. Swam, not swim. just like in Polish, it would be płynąłem. Now, Polish is a little bit different when it comes to the present tense. In Polish, you have just one present tense. There's one verb form which denotes something happening now. So they don't differentiate between something that is kind of generally true. In English, that would be what we call present simple, like I live in England, generally, and things that are just true at the moment in a temporary way, or kind of ongoing at the moment. In English, that's present continuous. For example, I'm talking to you now. It'd be wrong for me to say I talk to you now, because I don't do it all the time. It's not a general thing. Now, in Polish, that they don't differentiate between these two, what we call aspects. It's just, for example, if I said, I live in England in Polish, it would be mieszkam w Anglii. Now, in English, you could also say I'm living in England, which gives it kind of a sort of temporary sense. It might change. Polish, it'd still be the same, mieszkam w Anglii. Now, obviously, that doesn't mean Polish is less eloquent than English or anything like that. You can still just use a couple of the words to express whether it's permanent or temporary. But it's just not built into the verb structure that English has. In terms of future, well, English technically doesn't really have a future tense. It has just different forms to talk about the future. Polish has a specific tense ending that refers to something happening in the future, in a sort of completed way. And they have two. They have one that's called future perfective. It's just it happens once and that's it. It's finished in the future, or if it's kind of an ongoing future state of affairs. So, for example, you could say, I'll read the book. In English, it's quite similar. I'll read the book is like implied a sort of completion of reading it, compared to I will be reading the book. In Polish, they also make this kind of distinction. So I will be reading would be będę czytał. I'll read is przeczytam. So it's kind of strange that when we talk about the future, Polish does have kind of a way of expressing a completed one action done and one that's kind of ongoing, which you kind of expect in the present tense to do a similar sort of thing, like the difference between I read and I am reading. They don't differentiate. Both is just czytam. One thing I didn't say about the past, which is kind of similar to the future in Polish, is that you do have, again, these two aspects. So you can talk about something having happened, finished, done in the past in one kind of instance, and then you can have a form which implies kind of ongoing nature in the past. So, for example, I was eating my dinner, so you could say jadłem obiad. So jadłem is in this what we call imperfective, so it's kind of not completed, and you might expect something else to happen in that situation. Jadłem obiadek I co się stało. I was eating dinner and something happened. And then you could also have the completed way of talking about it, like I've eaten, sort of, so having finished eating. So in Polish you could say zjadłem obiadek, and that kind of implies completion. A bit of confusion, which is a pain for Polish people trying to learn English, is this present perfect. Like in English, we have a special form, like I have eaten, like just before. In English, if you say I have eaten, that implies it's completed, but in a time which is not finished in some sense. Like it could be like right now, 2 minutes ago, I finished eating. I can say I'm full. So in a sense, the time of the event is still sort of tangible, palpable. You can see it. It's relevant right now. So you say I've eaten. In Polish, that'd be zjadłem. But the strange thing is, in Polish, the word zjadłem, have eaten, it could be something that's happened in a finished time in the past. Like it'd be strange in English to say this morning, now it's evening. This morning I've eaten a banana. you would just say, this morning I ate a banana, because it's evening now, so the time's finished. It's not going on right now. So you'd use the sort of English equivalent of imperfective. So it's not ongoing. In Polish, you would say zjadłem banana. I have eaten. So maybe I can go into this a bit more detail in another video, but it's basically I'm trying to show you that the perfective and imperfective forms of Polish don't really work in the same way as in English, where we have present perfect and other forms of verbs. It's, a little bit different. Okay, what else have we got? So also with verbs, the person demonstrated. So in English, when we choose to take a verb, like like to eat, we say I eat, you eat, she eats, they eat. It's more or less the same. The only difference in the present tense is we got a little s on the he, she, it form. Polish is like a lot of other languages. The ending of the verb changes depending whether it's me, you, he, she, it, we as a group, you as plural as a group, and they as a group of people. They all have different endings, so you got to kind of keep that in your mind when you're trying to use a verb. It can be very confusing to a Pole if you use the wrong ending, especially if you don't include the pronoun like we, she, they, which is normal in Polish. For example, to say I eat, you wouldn't really say ja, jem, unless you had a special reason to say that. You just say jem. So if you get the wrong ending, if you say yesh, which is you eat, that completely changes the meaning, and it may be misunderstood, even in context. Same thing applies to past and future forms of verbs. You also have to be wary of what the person is with the verb. So I ate would be, I have eaten. Let's say stroke I ate. It's not really one to one. Is zjadłem. When is that I did it. You ate would be zjadłaś or zjadłeś. Another thing there I've just shown is the fact that the gender is reflected in the tense of the verb when you put it in the past, not when you put it in the present. So you ate, if you are a man, then it's zjadłeś. If you're a girl, it's zjadłaś. So you have to be wary of that as well. There's a lot more indication of gender in the language of Polish than there is in English. Same for adjectives, by the way. If I said you're hungry, then the word hungry, which is an adjective, if it's you male, then it would be głodny, and if you're a female, it would be głodna. So you've got to always keep in your mind what the gender is of the thing you're talking about, so that you reflect it in your choice of endings. It's really interesting how that's different to English. Okay, so that's person. Just a couple more things now. Pronunciation. So I'd say, just a few things to avoid, really. But Polish is really quite consistent for pronunciation. It's nothing like English, which is a pain in the neck for anyone trying to learn English. Polish, if you learn all the individual sounds of the alphabet, you'll more or less be able to pronounce the word. If you apply the stress in a way that the second to last syllable of the word is the one that you stress. So to take a longer word, for example, organisation, lots of Latin words ending in shun. In Polish is cia. So organizacja, organisation, organizacja. The stress is on the second to last syllable, the za part, organizacja. And that's pretty consistent in Polish, that second to last syllable, penultimate syllable being stressed. And then if you know all those individual noun and consonant and vowel sounds, then you'll be fine. Some things though that can happen if you're an English speaker and your native language is kind of what we call interfering with your second language that you're trying to speak. One of them is about weak sounds. this comes down to something called syllable timing and stress timing in languages. It's not quite black and white, but Polish generally has a preference for sort of clearly pronouncing every syllable in a word. So it takes as long as it needs to take to pronounce a word. Obviously, you can speak faster or slower, but a speaker of Polish, a native, will say each individual syllable, which sometimes baffles me, because it's why the language can sometimes sound like a machine gun, and that's the same for lots of other syllable timed languages like Spanish. Everything is enunciated. So in English, for example, which is a lot more what we call stress-timed language, is where certain elements of words, the smaller, sort of less important parts of words, kind of be sort of squashed and change sound, or kind of just be swallowed, or not even pronounced at all, so that they maintain a certain rhythm in the language. Where Polish is a lot more like. Now, what one effect of that is, which kind of really stands out if you're an English person trying to speak Polish and you get this wrong and it sounds, to me, sounds a bit sloppy, is the ah sound. In English, ah is quite often just sort of reduced to what we call schwa. It's like a sound. To take an example with ah, like organisation. You don't say organisation. Organisation, it's like a g sound, because that's a sort of unstressed part of the word organisation. The z part is quite pronounced, but the isn't. Whereas in Polish, the a, you've got to say it properly, especially if it's the end of a word, because that indicates that it's a feminine gender of something. So it sound a bit weird. For example, the word for woman, kobieta, so the last letter is a. Bad English pronunciation, would be kobieta, which it sounds really English, kobieta. So you're not really saying a anymore. You're not saying the a sound. You're saying which is actually a different sound. So to Paul, it's like that's it's not the right sound. Another common one is taking an e sound and making it an as well. So the word for but is ale. So the last sound is an e, or written as an e, pronounced e. An English person would be tempted in fast speech to say ale, which is it's actually quite different to what it should be, ale. It might sound similar to an English person, but it is quite a different sound when you actually analyse. Think about what you're doing in your mouth and how it actually sounds. Is pretty different. So just when you're speaking, or when you think working on improving your speaking, give each syllable and each sound, good attention, sort of really formulate it properly, even if you have to kind of do loads of gymnastics in your mouth to get each sound out properly, and it will sound better. It will sound more Polish than if you just kind of skip through it, because some videos on the internet I've seen of foreigners speaking Polish, and you get some that are quite fluent and are pretty good at talking, but their accent is abysmal. They're just kind of blah, 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 and they're not really caring. And it's fine if that's what they want to do. But if you want to sound more Polish, then think about those individual sounds properly. Another thing is hard and soft sounds. So for example, the word bread, ending in b sound, chleb. You don't really say chleb, you say chleb. So the b becomes p, because it becomes hard at the end of the word. So the last consonants of certain words will go hard. So a b will become a p, a v will become a f, a j will become a sh. You can learn these sort of rules. Like the word for husband is mange. Now it should be mange, so it's more like a sh sound, even though it's written in Z with a dot, which is more like a j, sound like je m'appelle. You don't say mange, you say mange. That's just a little thing really, and yeah, that's all I jotted down. So I hope explanations have made sense and I've not just confused you even more. This is the first kind of video like this I've made, so go easy. If you want to know any more and need any kind of clarifications or anything else that interests you, or if you want to share advice of your own, then I'd be really interested to hear what other learners of Polish have to say. Okay. Cześć.